"Sir, you need to step away from the vehicle and put your hands behind your back." Marcus Williams froze, the chamois cloth still dripping in his hand. Water pooled around his feet on the concrete floor of his own garage. The overhead fluorescent light buzzed, casting harsh shadows across the faces of two uniformed officers who had just walked into his property without permission. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus set the cloth down slowly, his movements deliberate. 23 years as a federal prosecutor had taught him that sudden movements around nervous cops could escalate situations fast. "Hands behind your back." Now, Officer Brennan stepped forward, his hand resting on his service weapon. "You're under arrest for theft of motor vehicle." Marcus almost laughed. Almost, but the metallic click of handcuffs being unclipped from Brennan's belt killed any humor. This wasn't a mistake, this was deliberate. The twist, the stolen car. Marcus is being arrested for washing in his own garage is actually a custom-built McLaren P1 prototype worth $2.3 million. What the HOA president and the responding officers don't know is that Marcus isn't just any resident. He's the lead federal prosecutor who's been quietly building a RICO case against the local police department's evidence tampering ring, and this arrest is happening exactly 48 hours before he's scheduled to present his findings to a federal grand jury. 3 hours earlier, Marcus had been in his study reviewing case files when the doorbell rang. Through the window, he'd seen Patricia Chambers, the HOA president, standing on his porch with her signature clipboard and disapproving scowl. "Mr. Williams, we need to discuss your violations of community standards." Marcus had opened the door, still holding his coffee. "Good afternoon, Patricia." "What violations?" "The noise ordinance, the commercial activity, the property value degradation." She'd rattled off the charges like a prosecutor herself, which was rich considering she sold real estate and bent rules daily. "I washed my car in my garage yesterday evening, with my garage door closed. Our noise consultant measured sound levels exceeding community standards, and there's evidence of commercial automotive services being conducted on residential property." Marcus had studied her face, looking for tells. Patricia Chambers had been gunning for him since he'd moved into Willowbrook Estates 6 months ago, the only black family in a development of million-dollar homes, and she'd made it clear they weren't welcome. What evidence? Professional-grade equipment, industrial washing systems, the smell of automotive chemicals. Patricia's voice had carried that particular tone of someone who'd rehearsed their lines. "I used dish soap and a garden hose. We'll see what the authorities have to say about that." Now, standing in his garage with Officer Brennan's handcuffs approaching his wrists, Marcus understood. This wasn't about noise ordinances or community standards. This was about a federal prosecutor getting too close to something someone wanted to stay buried. "Officer Brennan, I need to see the warrant." "Don't need a warrant. We have probable cause based on a report of stolen vehicle being processed on these premises." Marcus felt the cold metal close around his wrists. "What stolen vehicle?" "This is my car. 2023 McLaren, Payum Black. License plate, ... double. Quotes. Brennan consulted his notes. "License plate, MRC 2023. That's my car. I have the registration in my house. Save it for the judge." Brennan's partner, Officer Rodriguez, was already photographing the McLaren with his phone. Weird how a guy washing a stolen car has the keys, registration, and insurance papers. Huh. The sarcasm in Rodriguez's voice made Marcus's stomach drop. These officers knew exactly what they were doing. "I'm a federal prosecutor," Marcus said quietly. "I work out of the downtown federal building. You can verify, yeah? And I'm the Pope." Brennan guided him toward the squad car. Federal prosecutor living in Willowbrook, driving a $2 million car. Right. As they walked him past his front door, Marcus saw Patricia Chambers standing across the street, phone pressed to her ear, watching the show with obvious satisfaction. But something in her expression looked wrong. Not victorious, but nervous. Scared, even. The squad car door slammed shut. Detective Sarah Chen had been having a quiet Tuesday evening when the call came in about the stolen McLaren. She'd been reviewing case files at her desk, trying to make sense of recent evidence discrepancies when Brennan and Rodriguez brought in their arrest. Federal prosecutor, huh? Chen studied Marcus Williams as he sat in the interview room. His lawyer hadn't arrived yet, but Williams carried himself with the calm confidence of someone who'd spent years in courtrooms. "You know, I've prosecuted cases with the feds before. Never heard your name. White-collar crime division. I primarily handle financial crimes and public corruption." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Detective Chen, I need you to understand something. This arrest is not what it appears to be. Enlighten me. I've been building a case against evidence tampering in local law enforcement. The timeline of this arrest is not coincidental." Chen's pen stopped moving. That's a serious accusation. Thursday morning, I present my findings to a federal grand jury. Tonight, I'm arrested for stealing my own car. You tell me if that's coincidental. Before Chen could respond, the door opened. Lieutenant David Morrison entered, his face grim. Detective, we need to process this quickly. The car has been confirmed stolen through federal databases. Marcus watched Chen's face change. She looked at Morrison, then back at Marcus, something shifting in her expression. Lieutenant, I'd like to verify the federal database. Check myself. Already, done. The VIN matches a vehicle reported stolen from a McLaren dealership in Miami 3 weeks ago. I bought that car directly from McLaren's custom division 6 months ago. Marcus's voice remained steady, but his hands clenched. The VIN you're looking at is either wrong or falsified. Morrison's jaw tightened. Detective Chen, book him. We'll sort out his stories later. As Morrison left, Chen leaned back in her chair. Mr. Williams, help me understand something. If you're really a federal prosecutor investigating evidence, tampering, and this arrest is somehow connected to that investigation, why would local officers risk their careers to stop you? Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Because they're not just tampering with evidence, detective, they're selling it. Marcus's lawyer, David Kim, arrived at 11:47 p.m., looking like he'd been dragged from bed, which he had been 20 minutes later. He was standing in the hallway outside the interview room, his voice carrying through the thin walls. My client is the lead federal prosecutor on Operation Clean Sweep. If you don't release him immediately, I'll have federal marshals here within the hour. Detective Chen had been running background checks for 2 hours. Marcus Williams was exactly who he claimed to be, a decorated federal prosecutor specializing in public corruption cases. The McLaren's registration was legitimate, purchased directly from the manufacturer. The VIN number Morrison had claimed matched a stolen vehicle was off by 3 digits. Detective Officer Rodriguez appeared at her desk. We've got a problem. That McLaren in evidence. The real VIN doesn't match what's in the system. Chen looked up. What does that mean? It means someone altered the database entry, and, double quotes, Rodriguez lowered his voice. I checked the original theft report from Miami. The stolen McLaren was silver, not black. Different options package, different everything. The pieces were clicking into place. Chen had been investigating evidence discrepancies for months, drugs disappearing from evidence lockup, cash amounts not matching arrest reports, witness statements being altered. She'd suspected internal corruption but hadn't been able to prove it. Rodriguez, who processed the initial database check on the McLaren, Lieutenant Morrison, ran it himself, said it was high priority. Chen stood up. I need to see Marcus Williams. Now, they're not just tampering with evidence, they're creating it. Marcus sat across from Detective Chen in the interview room, his handcuffs finally removed. David Kim sat beside him, recording everything on his phone. 3 weeks ago, a McLaren P1 was stolen from a Miami dealership. Silver, VIN ending in 847. Someone in your department altered the database to show a black McLaren. VIN ending in 844. My car's VIN. When Patricia Chambers called in her noise complaint, it gave them the perfect opportunity. Chen spread the documents across the table. But why target you specifically? Because Operation Clean Sweep isn't just about evidence tampering. We've been tracking a network of corrupt officers who've been selling confiscated drugs, weapons, and vehicles. The operation runs through 3 departments, Miami-Dade, Broward County, and here. And you think Lieutenant Morrison is involved? I know Lieutenant Morrison is involved. He's been the inside contact for 18 months. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing Chen a series of text messages. These are communications between Morrison and a Miami-Dade detective named Carlos Reyes. They've been coordinating evidence transfers, falsifying reports, and splitting profits. Chen studied the messages. How did you get these? Federal wiretap warrant, authorized by Judge Patricia Hendricks 3 months ago. Marcus met her eyes. Detective Chen, I need you to understand something. If this arrest stands, if I'm discredited, before Thursday's grand jury presentation, 14 corrupt officers walk free, including some in your department. Who else? Morrison, obviously. Officer Brennan, he's been falsifying arrest reports for 6 months, and Marcus hesitated. I'm sorry, but Officer Santos from your narcotics division. Chen's face hardened. Santos had been her partner for 2 years. You're sure? Audio recordings, financial records, witness testimony, I'm sure. The door opened. Lieutenant Morrison entered, his face flushed with anger. Detective Chen, what's taking so long? Book him, and let's move on. Chen stood slowly. Lieutenant, I need to ask you about the VIN verification you ran on the McLaren. What about it? The VIN you entered doesn't match the actual VIN on the vehicle. Morrison's expression didn't change, but his hands clenched. Clerical error. Happens all the time. The difference between 844 and 847 isn't a clerical error, Lieutenant, it's deliberate falsification. Detective Chen, you're out of line. Marcus watched the confrontation, recognizing the moment when everything shifted. Morrison's face had gone pale, and his right hand was inching toward his service weapon. Lieutenant Morrison, Marcus said quietly, I wouldn't. Federal marshals arrived at 2:47 a.m. By 3:15 a.m., Lieutenant Morrison was in federal custody, along with officers Brennan and Santos. The evidence room was sealed, and a federal forensics team was processing 3 years' worth of corrupted case files. Detective Chen stood in the parking lot, watching the federal vehicles disappear into the night. Marcus Williams approached her. His McLaren keys finally returned. I'm sorry about Santos, he said quietly. Don't be. If he was dirty, I'd rather know. Chen looked at him. What happens now? Thursday's grand jury presentation goes forward. Morrison's arrest actually strengthens our case, shows the network was desperate enough to risk everything to stop us. And Patricia Chambers. Marcus smiled grimly. Conspiracy to file false police reports, at minimum. Turns out she's been taking payments from Morrison for months. Every HOA complaint she filed was designed to target residents Morrison wanted pressured. Chen shook her head. A whole network of corruption, and it nearly worked. It would have worked if not for one thing. Marcus unlocked his car. You chose to investigate instead of just following orders. That made all the difference. As Marcus drove home, he thought about the phone call he'd make to his wife in the morning. She'd been worried about moving to Willowbrook Estates, concerned about being the only black family in the development. He'd assured her that his position as a federal prosecutor would protect them from discrimination. He'd been wrong about that, but he'd been right about something else. The law, when applied correctly, was colorblind. It just took the right people to apply it. Thursday morning, Marcus Williams stood before a federal grand jury and presented Operation Clean Sweep's findings. 14 indictments were handed down, including charges against Lieutenant Morrison for racketeering, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Patricia Chambers was arrested that afternoon in her real estate office, charged with conspiracy and filing false police reports. The HOA voted her out of office the following week. 6 months later, Detective Sarah Chen was promoted to lieutenant and assigned to head the department's new Internal Affairs Division. Her first case was reviewing every arrest made by the corrupt officers, ensuring that justice delayed could still become justice served. Marcus Williams still lives in Willowbrook Estates. He still washes his McLaren in his garage. But now, when neighbors complain about the noise, they call him directly instead of the HOA. Some of them even ask for car washing advice.